Hi, my name is Jay Oza, and I know I used a provocative title, Why Most Persuasive Speeches Suck. And the reason I use this title is because I currently mentor a Coursera free course called Introduction to Public Speaking, where I review quite a lot of speeches, especially persuasive speeches, the one that people actually record and post. And what I found is that people miss the fundamental part of this speech, which is to make it persuasive. Now you might be saying, like, what does that mean? Okay, what makes this speech tricky is that you need both content and stylistic technique. And what I found is that most people do a fairly good job with the content. And content, by this I mean stock issues that's taught in the class, which I think is excellent. And the stock issues consists of ills, blames, cures, and consequences, and then end it with call to action. Right? So that's a fairly straightforward way of organizing a persuasive speech. And then the course goes into, in the last lecture, stylistic technique. So when I see these speeches, they all tend to be okay with the stock issues, but there is no real stylistic technique that's obvious to me. And the key thing in a persuasive speech is the stylistic technique. That's what people remember. The stock issues people will not remember afterwards. But the stylistic technique is what gives the speech emotion. So the speech may be persuasive structurally, functionally, but if it's not persuasive emotionally, it doesn't work. At the end of the speech, there's only one question that matters to the audience. Is the speech persuasive? Yes or no. That's it. The stock issues is what you use to bring in the logic to support your case, but it's the emotional aspect of the speech that can only come from the stylistic technique. That's what people get, feel. Let me give you two examples of this. The first one is the Ronald Reagan's famous tear down the wall speech that he gave in 1988, I believe, in front of the Berlin Wall. Today, that speech is known as that, tear down the wall. And that technique he uses there is called the maxim technique. That's a maxim. It's like a pithy saying, right? People do not know what the stock issues were in that speech, but they got the idea of what that speech is about from that tear down the wall. They can pretty much figure it out that it had to do with freedom from tyranny. Second example, the famous Martin Luther King speech, I have a dream. What is that speech known as? I have a dream. What is I have a dream? It's a stylistic technique known as anaphora. He uses I have a dream dot dot dot. I have a dream dot dot dot. I have a dream dot dot dot. And that's all you hear in the media when they're showing Martin Luther King's famous speech in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Now, the speech is really well structured. I urge you to read the entire speech, but most people only know that part of it. I have a dream, that anaphora that he uses, that stylistic technique, which is so effective. They don't know the stock issues, but they know the speech had to do with equality for everyone. Now, most people think that these kind of techniques are for like big speakers like Reagan, Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Bill Clinton, and you would be wrong, completely wrong. I actually used this technique recently in some situation that I had to deal with. So let me give you an example of that. My son is in a marching band, in the school district that I live in. And it's a school district that does not get a lot of students to join the band. So a few years ago, they decided to allow eighth graders to join the band. And I thought that was a great idea. But then recently, I found out that the administration did not want to award a varsity letter to eighth graders for whatever reason that I wasn't convinced with. It had to do with that they weren't taking AP courses, etc. The reasons were like a red herring. They were not really legitimate reasons. And I did not agree with that decision. And there was a meeting scheduled where we had to discuss that with parents there, with the band director. And other parents really didn't have much to say, but I did. But before I went there, I thought about what exactly I wanted to say. And I used this stylistic technique. I used maxim, and my maxim was, school is about fairness. Let me repeat that again. School is about fairness. That was my maxim. And then I went on to show, using anaphora, that is it fair that a student does everything that another student does, but does not receive a varsity letter. Then I said, is it fair that we don't have a freshman band, a JV band, we only have a varsity band, but you still can't receive a varsity letter by being in the varsity band? And then there were another anaphora I used, 3 of them. And it was persuasive because the administration backed off. And they're not going to do that. They are going to award varsity letter to 8th graders. Now this is me. I'm not Martin Luther King. I'm not Ronald Reagan. But it is powerful. You have to use it if you want to give an effective, persuasive speech. Okay, so you might be asking, well, how do I go about doing this? Here's what you do. Start with the stylistic technique and then work on your stock issues. Okay? So like I said, I worked on my stylistic technique, school is about fairness. And then I added another stylistic technique, and then I filled in with the stock issues, ill, blames, cure, consequences. Okay, so that's how I did it. And it worked. And I used it for something quite local. I didn't give a speech in front of the Lincoln Memorial, but this is the kind of way you can use it for any type of a situation where you have to persuade. And this is how you can go about it. Now, what makes it so difficult when it comes to this course is the way the course is laid out. It's a 10-week course, and the persuasive speech occupies the last, the second last 3 weeks. So it's like week 7, 8, and 9, right? And the lectures are excellent. It's just the way they come up. And it starts with the stock issues. And then in lecture week 9, it goes into the stylistic technique. And the examples that are used in the stylistic technique are really powerful examples like Reagan, Churchill, Malcolm X, Clinton. So I think what's happening here is that a lot of students feel like those techniques are for these big speakers, not for them. And you would be completely wrong if you believe that. These techniques are for all of us. It's all of us if you want to be an effective, persuasive speaker. So here's what I suggest you do. When you get to persuasive speech, I want you to view the lectures, the video lectures on the stylistic techniques first. Get it into your head that these techniques are for you to use. And then go through it right from the beginning, from week 7, all the lectures, and you'll come through it again. And then when you're working on your speech, don't start with the stock issues. Start with your stylistic technique. Come up with a maxim, come up with an anaphora, or what other techniques that you feel comfortable with. And then once you have them, then you can go and work on your stock issues. And I believe if you do that, your speech is going to be very powerful and persuasive. So let me know what you think of this. If you have any different ideas on how to make a speech persuasive, let me know. If you think there's a better way of doing it, I want to know. Thank you for watching, and good luck.